In a small town tucked away in the Midwest, life moved at its own slow pace. The streets were lined with old brick buildings, and everyone seemed to know each other, or so it felt. But beneath the surface of this seemingly quiet community lay deep-rooted issues that no one liked to talk about openly: racism, inequality, and mistrust between the people and those meant to protect them. At the center of our story is a 16-year-old girl who would soon become an unlikely hero. She wasn't extraordinary at first glance, just another high school student trying to get through her teenage years without too much drama. Her name was Maya Johnson, and she had always been the kind of person who preferred books over parties. While most kids her age spent their evenings scrolling through social media or hanging out at the park, Maya could often be found buried in thick law textbooks or practicing arguments for her school's debate club. To her, these weren't just hobbies. They were her passion. Maya lived in a modest home with her parents, both hardworking individuals who had taught her the value of standing up for what's right. They didn't have much, but they made sure Maya understood the importance of education and using her voice when others couldn't. That lesson stuck with her more than anything else. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, Maya left the library after hours of studying. She carried a stack of heavy law books under her arm, feeling proud of how productive her day had been. As she walked along the dimly lit sidewalk toward home, a police car pulled up beside her, its headlights casting long shadows on the ground. Out stepped Officer Greg Hensley, a man well known in the neighborhood, not for being approachable or friendly, but for his harsh attitude and questionable behavior. He had a reputation for targeting certain groups of people, especially young folks from minority communities. Some whispered behind closed doors that he used his badge not to serve and protect, but to intimidate and assert dominance. But Maya didn't know any of this yet. All she saw was a uniform. "Hey, you!" Hensley barked, his tone sharp and accusatory. "What are you doing out here?" Startled but calm, Maya stopped walking and turned to face him. "I'm just heading home," she replied politely. "I was at the library." Hensley squinted at her, then glanced at the pile of books in her arms. A smirk crept across his face. "Library? Really? What's a kid like you doing with all those big books?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. "You planning to read them? All tonight?" Maya frowned, confused by his tone. "Yes, sir. I'm reading them because I want to learn," she said firmly, refusing to let his rudeness shake her confidence. But Hensley wasn't satisfied. Instead of letting her go, he leaned closer, his expression mocking. "Learn what? How to cause trouble? You look suspicious to me." Suspicious? The word hit Maya like a punch to the gut. Suspicious of what? Of carrying books? Of wanting to better herself? Before she could respond, Hensley continued, his laughter cutting through the cool night air. "What are you gonna do with all those books anyway? Become a lawyer?" He chuckled again, clearly amused by his own joke. For a moment, Maya stood frozen, anger bubbling inside her chest. She wanted to scream, to tell him exactly how wrong he was, that she was smart enough, capable enough, and determined enough to achieve whatever she set her mind to. But instead, she took a deep breath and reminded herself to stay composed. Arguing wouldn't help her now. Still chuckling, Hensley scribbled something on a notepad and handed it to her. "Here's your ticket for loitering. Don't let me catch. You're looking suspicious again." With that, he climbed back into his patrol car and drove off, leaving Maya standing alone on the empty street. Her hands trembled as she looked down at the citation. Loitering? For simply walking home? It didn't make sense. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them away. This wasn't fair, and she knew it. But more than sadness, she felt a burning determination rising within her. If this was how the system worked, if someone like Hensley could treat her this way just because of the color of her skin, then she wouldn't stand for it. Not anymore. That night, Maya sat at her kitchen table, staring at the ticket while her parents listened, quietly to her recount the incident. When she finished, there was a long pause before her dad spoke. "You can fight this, Maya," he said gently. You've got the brains and the heart for it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Her mom nodded in agreement. "And will support you every step of the way." With their encouragement, Maya decided to take action. Over the next few weeks, she poured herself into researching laws, court procedures, and case studies. She visited the local community center, where a retired attorney named Mr. Alvarez offered to guide her. He was skeptical at first, unsure if a teenager could handle such a daunting task. But as Maya presented her ideas and strategies, his skepticism turned into admiration. "You've got something special, kid," he told her one afternoon. "Don't ever lose that fire." As the date of the hearing approached, Maya prepared tirelessly, rehearsing her arguments and gathering evidence to prove that Hensley's actions were unjustified. Meanwhile, unaware of the storm brewing, Officer Hensley brushed off the upcoming trial as nothing more than a nuisance. He joked with his colleagues about how easy it would be to shut down some uppity teenager in court. Little did he know, he was about to meet his match, and it would change everything. After the humiliating encounter with Officer Hensley, Maya's life took a sharp turn. The ticket for loitering felt like more than just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of everything she had always feared about the world. That no matter how hard she worked or how much she tried to prove herself, some people would never see her as equal. But instead of letting it break her spirit, Maya decided to use it as fuel. She wasn't going to let this moment define her. She was going to redefine it. The first thing Maya did was sit down at her desk and write out what she wanted to achieve. It wasn't just about getting rid of the ticket anymore. She realized this could be an opportunity to stand up not only for herself, but for everyone who had ever been treated unfairly because of their race, age, or background. Her parents noticed the fire in her eyes when she told them her plan. They knew their daughter was smart, but they also saw something else, a determination that scared even them a little. Maya spent hours poring over books and articles about civil rights, police misconduct, and courtroom procedures. She read case studies where ordinary people had challenged authority and won. Every night after school, she would lock herself in her room, surrounded by stacks of notes, highlighters, and sticky tabs marking important pages. Sometimes she stayed up so late that her mom would knock on her door with a cup of hot chocolate, urging her to rest. But Maya couldn't stop, not until she felt ready. One day, while searching online for resources, Maya stumbled upon information about a retired attorney who volunteered at the local community center. His name wasn't mentioned anywhere, but his reputation spoke for itself. He had helped countless people fight unjust charges and had a knack for simplifying complicated legal jargon. Without hesitation, Maya decided to visit him. When she walked into the community center, the old man looked up from his desk with a mix of curiosity and surprise. He didn't expect to see a teenager showing up unannounced, clutching a folder filled with handwritten notes. Maya introduced herself nervously but confidently explained why she was there. She told him about the incident with Officer Hensley, the ticket, and her desire to contest it. At first, the retired attorney listened silently, his expression unreadable. But as Maya spoke, he began nodding slowly, clearly impressed by her knowledge and passion. "You've done your homework," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. "Most adults don't come prepared like this." Encouraged by his words, Maya asked if he would mentor her. After a long pause, he agreed, but only if she promised to put in the work. "This isn't going to be easy," he warned her. "You're going up against someone who thinks he can walk all over you. Are you ready for that?" Maya nodded without hesitation. "I'm ready." Over the next few weeks, the two of them worked tirelessly together. The retired attorney taught her how to structure her arguments, how to anticipate counterpoints, and how to stay calm under pressure. He drilled her on possible scenarios, asking tough questions to prepare her for anything the court might throw at her. Meanwhile, Maya gathered evidence to support her case. She obtained surveillance footage from a nearby store that showed she hadn't done anything suspicious. She reached out to neighbors who had witnessed the interaction and were willing to testify on her behalf. Slowly but surely, her case began to take shape. While Maya was busy preparing, Officer Hensley remained oblivious to the storm brewing. To him, The upcoming hearing was nothing more than a formality, a chance to show everyone that he was untouchable. He bragged to his colleagues about how he planned to shut down some uppity kid in court. Word spread around the precinct, and several officers decided to attend the hearing to show their support for Hensley. They laughed about it during coffee breaks, making jokes about how ridiculous it was for a teenager to think she could take on the system. On the morning of the hearing, Maya woke up early. She dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made her feel confident and professional. As she stood in front of the mirror, tying her hair back neatly, she reminded herself of why she was doing this. This wasn't just about winning, it was about proving that she and others like her deserved respect. Before leaving the house, her parents hugged her tightly, whispering words of encouragement. "You've got this," her dad said firmly. "Just be yourself." When Maya arrived at the courthouse, she was surprised to see how many people had shown up. Friends from school, teachers, and even strangers who had heard about her story filled the benches. She spotted Mr. Alvarez sitting near the front, giving her a reassuring nod. For a brief moment, she felt overwhelmed by the weight of everyone's expectations. But then she remembered something her mom had once told her. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about moving forward even when you are. As the judge entered the room and called the session to order, the atmosphere grew tense. Officer Hensley sat smugly beside his lawyer, exchanging amused glances with his colleagues. When it was time for Maya to present her case, she took a deep breath and stepped forward. The entire courtroom fell silent as she began speaking. Her voice was steady, her words clear and deliberate. She started by recounting the events of that night, painting a vivid picture of how she had been targeted unfairly. Then she presented her evidence. The surveillance footage, witness testimonies, and excerpts from constitutional law that directly contradicted Hensley's actions. With each point she made, Hensley's smirk faded a little more. By the time she finished, the room was buzzing with murmurs of disbelief and admiration. It was during cross-examination that things really heated up. Hensley's lawyer tried to trip her up with tricky questions, but Maya anticipated every move. When Hensley himself took the stand, his arrogance became his downfall. Every attempt to belittle her backfired as she calmly turned his own statements against him. At one point, when he sneered, "You think you're smarter than me?" Maya responded coolly, "I don't think, I know." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and even the judge raised an eyebrow at her audacity. By the end of the hearing, it was clear to everyone that Maya had won, not just legally but morally. The judge dismissed the citation, calling Hensley's behavior unacceptable and warning him about the consequences of abusing his power. As the verdict was announced, Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. But more than that, she felt proud, not just of herself, but of everyone who had supported her along the way. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around her, eager to hear her thoughts. Maya kept her answers simple and humble, focusing on the bigger picture. "This isn't just about me," she said. "It's about standing up for what's right, no matter how hard it is." News of her victory spread quickly, inspiring people far beyond her small town. Letters and messages poured in from strangers thanking her for giving them hope. Universities reached out, offering scholarships and opportunities. But despite the attention, Maya stayed grounded. She knew this was only the beginning of her journey. There was still so much work to be done, and she was ready to do it. The day of the hearing arrived, and the small-town courthouse buzzed with anticipation. It wasn't every day that a 16-year-old girl stood toe-to-toe with a seasoned police officer in front of a judge. Word had spread quickly through the community, drawing a crowd far larger than anyone expected. Friends, family, teachers, and even curious strangers packed the benches, whispering among themselves about what might happen next. The air was thick with tension, excitement, and, for some, a quiet hope that justice would prevail. Maya sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped tightly together to hide their trembling. She wore a simple but polished outfit, something borrowed from her mom, that made her look older and more confident than her years. Beside her sat Mr. Alvarez, the retired attorney who had coached her tirelessly for weeks. He gave her an encouraging smile as they waited for the proceedings to begin. Across the room, Officer Hensley leaned back casually in his chair, chatting with his colleagues. His demeanor screamed arrogance, as if he were already certain of the outcome. When the judge entered the courtroom and called the session to order, the murmurs died down, replaced by an eerie silence. Maya took a deep breath, reminding herself of everything she had prepared for this moment. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about proving that fairness mattered, that no one should be treated differently because of their race or age. As the hearing began, the opposing lawyer, a tall man with slicked back hair and a condescending smirk, rose to present Officer Hensley's side of the story. He painted Maya as a troublemaker, someone who thought she was smarter than everyone else simply because she liked reading books. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "this is nothing more than a misunderstanding. My client was doing his job, ensuring the safety of our community. But instead of cooperating, this young lady chose to challenge authority." The lawyer's words stung, but Maya didn't let them show on her face. Instead, she focused on the facts. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up slowly, taking a moment to steady herself. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her voice came out strong and clear. "Your Honor," she began, her eyes fixed firmly on the judge. "On the night in question, I was walking home after spending hours studying at the library. I wasn't causing any disturbance, nor was I breaking any laws. Yet Officer Hensley stopped me solely because of how I looked and what I was carrying: books. He accused me of loitering, though I was merely exercising my right to move freely in my own neighborhood." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "This isn't just about me. It's about holding those in power accountable when they abuse it. It's about standing up for people who are too often dismissed or ignored because of the color of their skin. And, most importantly, it's about showing that justice belongs to everyone, not just those who wear badges." Her opening statement drew murmurs of approval from the audience. Even the judge seemed intrigued, leaning forward slightly as if eager to hear more. With each sentence, Maya grew more confident, weaving together evidence and arguments like a seasoned attorney. She presented surveillance footage showing that she had been walking peacefully, posed no threat, and hadn't lingered anywhere long enough to justify being labeled as suspicious. Witness testimonies backed her up, confirming that Officer Hensley's behavior had been unnecessarily aggressive, but it was during cross-examination that things really heated up. Hensley's lawyer tried to rattle her with tricky questions, attempting to make her appear inexperienced or unsure. "You're just a teenager," he sneered. "What do you know about the law? How can you possibly understand something as complex as civil rights?" Maya didn't flinch. "I may be young," she replied calmly, "but I've spent countless hours studying the law. I know my rights and I know when they're being violated. Age doesn't determine knowledge. It's effort that does." The courtroom erupted into murmurs again, and even the judge allowed himself a small smile. Hensley's lawyer frowned, clearly thrown off balance. But he wasn't done yet. Turning to Officer Hensley, he asked him to explain why he had issued the citation. Hensley took the stand, looking smug as he recounted his version of events. He described Maya as acting suspiciously and claimed he was only following protocol. But Maya listened carefully, noting inconsistencies in his story. When it was her turn to question him, she pounced. "So, officer," she began, her tone polite but firm, "you say I was acting suspiciously. Can you clarify what exactly I did that made me seem threatening?" Hensley hesitated, caught off guard by the directness of her question. "Well, you were carrying all those books," he muttered finally. "That seemed odd." "Odd?" Maya repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Are you saying it's illegal to carry books now? Or is it only suspicious if I do it?" The courtroom erupted in laughter, and even the judge struggled to suppress a chuckle. Hensley flushed red, realizing he had walked straight into a trap. From there, Maya dismantled his testimony piece by piece, pointing out contradictions and highlighting how his actions violated basic principles of fairness. By the time she finished, Hensley looked visibly rattled, while his colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Finally, it was time for closing statements. Maya rose once more, her voice steady and resolute. "Your Honor," she said, addressing the judge directly, "this case isn't just about a ticket. It's about accountability. If we allow officers to target individuals based on stereotypes, rather than evidence, then we risk losing the trust of the very communities they're meant to protect. Today I ask you to send a message, not just to Officer Hensley but to everyone watching, that justice must apply equally to all." The room fell silent as the judge considered her words. After a few moments, he delivered his verdict. The Mike citation was dismissed, and he issued a stern warning to Hensley about abusing his authority. The decision sparked applause from the audience, though the judge quickly called for order. As Maya returned to her seat, tears welled up in her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief and pride. She had done it. Against all odds, she had won. Outside, the courthouse reporters swarmed around her, eager to capture her reaction. Maya kept her responses humble, thanking her mentors, her family, and everyone who had believed in her. "This victory isn't mine alone," she told them. "It belongs to anyone who has ever felt powerless but refused to give up." Word of her triumph spread like wildfire, turning Maya into an overnight sensation. Social media lit up with praise for her courage and intellect, and local news outlets hailed her as a hero. Offers poured in from universities, scholarships, and organizations eager to support her journey. But amidst all the attention, Maya remained grounded. She knew this was just the beginning. There was still so much work to be done, and she was ready to take it on. For Officer Hensley, however, the fallout was immediate and devastating. His reputation crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny, and his colleagues distanced themselves from him. What had started as a routine traffic stop had spiraled into a career-ending scandal. Though he tried to defend himself, few were willing to listen. In the end, he resigned quietly, disappearing from the public eye altogether. As for Maya, she returned home that evening to find her parents waiting with open arms. They hugged her tightly, tears streaming down their faces. "We're so proud of you," her mom whispered, holding her close. Maya smiled, feeling a warmth that no amount of ridicule or hardship could ever diminish. She had faced one of her greatest fears and emerged stronger than ever. Little did she know this was only the start of her journey. The world was watching now, and Maya was ready to lead the charge for change. The victory in court didn't just change Maya's life. It sent ripples through the entire town. Overnight, she became a symbol of hope and resilience. People who had once felt powerless against injustice saw her as proof that standing up for what's right could make a difference. News of her triumph spread far beyond the small Midwest town where it all began. Local newspapers wrote glowing articles about the teen lawyer, and national outlets picked up the story, dubbing her a voice for the unheard. Social media buzzed with hashtags like Justice for All and Maya's Courage, turning her into an unexpected celebrity. But fame wasn't something Maya craved or even fully understood. At first, she found it overwhelming. Strangers stopped her on the street to shake her hand or thank her for inspiring them. Friends from school treated her differently, some with admiration, others with envy. Reporters camped outside her house, hoping to get an interview. Her parents did their best to shield her from the chaos, reminding her to stay focused on what truly mattered, fighting for justice, not chasing recognition. Despite the whirlwind of attention, Maya refused to let it distract her. She knew this moment was bigger than her. It was about the message. So instead of basking in the spotlight, she used her newfound platform to speak out. She gave interviews, but only to highlight issues like racial profiling and police accountability. She attended rallies and community meetings, sharing her story to encourage others to stand up for themselves. And when universities started offering her scholarships, she accepted them graciously, knowing education would be her key to making lasting change. Her journey didn't stop at speeches and interviews, though. Maya threw herself into advocacy, work, partnering with organizations dedicated to civil rights and equality. One group in particular stood out, a nonprofit called Equal Ground that provided free legal aid to marginalized communities. They invited Maya to join their team as a youth ambassador, giving her a chance to help real people facing similar struggles. For Maya, it felt like coming full circle. This was exactly why she had fought so hard in court, not for personal glory, but to create opportunities for others. As time went on, Maya's influence grew. She became a mentor to younger students, especially those who felt overlooked or underestimated. She visited schools, talking to kids about the importance of believing in themselves and using their voices. Many of these students reminded her of her younger self, bright-eyed, curious, and hungry for knowledge. Seeing their faces filled her with a sense of purpose. If she could inspire even one person to dream bigger than everything she had been through would be worth it. Meanwhile, Officer Hensley's life took a sharp downward turn. After resigning from the force, he struggled to find stable employment. His reputation followed him wherever he went, making it nearly impossible to rebuild his career. Some former colleagues tried to distance themselves completely, while others openly criticized him for tarnishing the department's image. The financial strain weighed heavily on him, forcing him to sell his home and move into a tiny apartment on the outskirts of town. It was a far cry from the life he had once known. But the worst part wasn't the loss of material things. It was the loneliness. Hensley had always prided himself on being tough and independent, but now he found himself isolated, abandoned by the very system he had served for years. He spent most of his days drinking coffee alone at diners or wandering aimlessly around the city, replaying the courtroom scene in his mind. Every time he thought about how Maya had dismantled his arguments with such poise and precision, a mix of anger and shame bubbled inside him. Who was this girl anyway? How had she managed to expose him so thoroughly? One evening, while scrolling through social media, Hensley stumbled upon a video of Maya speaking at a rally. She stood confidently behind a podium, addressing a crowd of hundreds. Her words were powerful yet simple, emphasizing unity and understanding. Watching her, Hensley felt something stir within him, a flicker of regret he couldn't ignore. For the first time, he allowed himself to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he had been wrong. It wasn't long before reality came knocking again. A few months after leaving the force, Hensley faced another challenge, mounting legal troubles stemming from past misconduct. Complaints from previous incidents resurfaced and lawsuits piled up faster than he could handle. Desperate and out of options, he reached out to several attorneys, but none were willing to take his case. Word had gotten around about his history, and no one wanted to associate with someone seen as a liability. In a last-ditch effort, Hensley decided to contact Maya. It wasn't easy swallowing his pride, but he had nowhere else to turn. He wrote her a letter, explaining his situation and asking if she might recommend a lawyer who could help him navigate the mess. To his surprise, she responded, not with anger or hostility, but with calm professionalism. She agreed to meet him, in person, to discuss his request. When they finally sat down together at a quiet cafe, the atmosphere was tense. Hensley fidgeted nervously with his coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. Maya, on the other hand, remained composed, listening intently, as he explained his predicament. When he finished, there was a long pause before she spoke. "I'll represent you," she said finally, surprising even herself. Hensley looked up, stunned. "Why would you do that?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "After everything I did to you?" Maya leaned back in her chair, choosing her words carefully. "Because everyone deserves a fair chance," she replied. "Even you." Her decision shocked many, including her family and friends. Some questioned whether representing Hensley was wise, given their history. But Maya stood firm in her belief that true justice meant giving people the opportunity to learn and grow, even those who had made mistakes. She also knew this partnership could send a powerful message. Forgiveness and redemption were possible, no matter how deep the wounds. Working together wasn't easy. Their initial meetings were awkward and strained, with old resentments bubbling beneath the surface. Hensley often bristled at Maya's directness, while she sometimes struggled to separate her emotions from the task at hand. But over time, they found common ground. Through long conversations and heated debates, Hensley began to confront the biases and prejudices that had shaped his behavior for years. Slowly, painfully, he started to see the world, and himself, through different eyes. Their collaboration culminated in a landmark settlement that held the police department accountable for years of discriminatory practices. While the victory was significant, it came with mixed feelings for both Maya and Hensley. For him, it marked the beginning of a long road toward redemption. For her, it reinforced the idea that progress required more than just winning battles. It demanded empathy, patience, and a willingness to bridge divides. By the end of it all, Hensley wasn't the same man who had laughed at a teenage girl in court. He still had a lot to learn, but for the first time in years, he felt hopeful. And Maya? She walked away knowing she had stayed true to her values, proving that courage and compassion could coexist, even in the face of adversity. Years had passed since that fateful day in court, and Maya was no longer the wide-eyed teenager who had stood up to a racist cop. Now in her late 20s, she had transformed into a force to be reckoned with, a civil rights attorney whose name carried weight across the nation. Her journey hadn't been easy, but every challenge she faced only strengthened her resolve. She wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. She was building a legacy. Maya returned to her hometown after graduating, at the top of her law school class. It wasn't nostalgia that brought her back. It was purpose. The same streets where she had once felt powerless now served as her battleground. She opened a small legal practice dedicated to helping those who couldn't afford representation, focusing on cases involving police misconduct, racial profiling, and systemic inequality. Word spread quickly, and soon people from neighboring towns began seeking her out. For many, Maya wasn't just a lawyer, she was a beacon of hope. But Maya's work extended beyond the courtroom. She became a vocal advocate for policy change, speaking at conferences, writing op-eds, and lobbying lawmakers to address the root causes of injustice. Her speeches were raw and heartfelt, drawing from her own experiences to connect with audiences. "The system doesn't fail by accident," she often said. "It fails because we allow it to, but together we can fix it." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring countless others to join the fight for equality. One day, while reviewing new case files, Maya received an unexpected visitor. It was Officer Hensley, or rather, the man he had become. Gone was the cocky, dismissive demeanor that had once defined him. In its place was someone humbled, almost unrecognizable. He sat across from her desk, nervously twisting his hat in his hands, looking like a shadow of his former self. "I didn't know if you'd see me," he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. "But I didn't know who else to turn to." Maya studied him carefully, her expression unreadable. Part of her wanted to refuse, to let him face the consequences of his actions alone. But another part remembered why she had chosen this path in the first place. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about fairness, accountability, and the possibility of redemption. After a long pause, she nodded. "Tell me what's going on," she said simply. Hensley explained how his life had spiraled out of control after leaving the force. Lawsuits stemming from past misconduct had drained his savings, leaving him financially ruined. Worse still, he had become a pariah in the community, shunned by former friends and colleagues alike. No one wanted anything to do with him, not even lawyers willing to take his case. He had hit rock bottom and saw no way out. Listening to him, Maya felt a pang of sympathy. This wasn't the arrogant officer who had mocked her all those years ago. This was a broken man desperate for a second chance. Though it wasn't an easy decision, she agreed to represent him, not out of pity, but because she believed everyone deserved fair treatment under the law. Even someone like him. Their partnership was rocky at first. Old wounds ran deep, and trust didn't come easily. During their initial meetings, tensions flared as they navigated their complicated history. Hensley struggled to confront the mistakes he had made, while Maya wrestled with her own emotions, torn between anger and compassion. But over time, something remarkable happened. They began to understand each other. Through countless conversations, Maya challenged Hensley to reflect on his actions and the harm they had caused. She shared stories of clients who had suffered because of officers like him, forcing him to see the human cost of his behavior. At first, he resisted, clinging to excuses and justifications. But slowly, painfully, he started to break down the walls he had built around himself. He admitted things he had never dared to say aloud, that he had been prejudiced, that he had abused his power, that he regretted the pain he had inflicted. For Maya, working with Hensley was both exhausting and enlightening. It tested her patience and forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about forgiveness and humanity. There were moments when she questioned whether she was doing the right thing, whether helping him somehow betrayed the very principles she stood for. But then she reminded herself of why she had become a lawyer in the first place: to create change, not perpetuate cycles of hatred. Their collaboration culminated in a landmark settlement that held the police department accountable for decades of discriminatory practices. While the victory was significant, it came with mixed emotions. For Hensley, it marked the beginning of a long journey toward redemption. For Maya, it reinforced the idea that progress required more than just winning battles. It demanded empathy, understanding, and a willingness to bridge divides. In the months that followed, Hensley quietly faded into obscurity. He didn't seek forgiveness or recognition. Instead, he focused on rebuilding his life one step at a time. Occasionally, he attended Maya's public lectures, sitting inconspicuously in the back row. Their interactions remained brief and awkward, but there was a mutual respect that hadn't existed before. For Maya, seeing him there was a reminder of how far they had both come and how much work still lay ahead. Meanwhile, Maya continued to dedicate herself to her mission. She founded a nonprofit organization aimed at empowering marginalized communities through education and advocacy. The group offered free legal clinics, workshops on civil rights, and mentorship programs for young aspiring lawyers. Many of her mentees reminded her of her younger self, bright, passionate, and determined to make a difference. Watching them grow filled her with pride and renewed energy. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. Awards and accolades poured in, but Maya cared little for the titles. What mattered most to her was the impact she was making. Every client she helped, every policy she influenced, every person she inspired brought her closer to the world she envisioned, a world where justice truly belonged to everyone. As the years went by, Maya's story became legend. People talked about the teenage girl who had taken on a corrupt system and won, not just for herself but for countless others. They spoke of her courage, her brilliance, and her unwavering commitment to fairness. But Maya never saw herself as extraordinary. To her, she was simply someone who refused to stay silent when silence meant complicity. And so Maya kept fighting, not because she had to, but because she believed. Believed in the power of justice, the strength of community, and the endless potential of the human spirit. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but she also knew she wasn't walking it alone. Together, step by step, they were building a better future. By the time Maya reached her early 30s, she had become more than just a lawyer or an advocate. She was a symbol of resilience and hope. Her name echoed in courtrooms, classrooms, and community centers across the country. People didn't just admire her for her legal victories. They respected her for her humanity. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that inspired those around her, never losing sight of where she came from or why she started this journey. Maya's nonprofit organization flourished, growing into a nationwide network dedicated to empowering marginalized voices. The group offered free legal aid, hosted educational workshops, and provided mentorship programs for young people eager to make a difference. Many of these mentees were teenagers who reminded Maya of herself at their age, bright, curious, and full of fire. Watching them grow gave her a sense of fulfillment that no award or recognition ever could. But Maya wasn't content to rest on her laurels. Every day brought new challenges, new injustices to tackle. She traveled extensively, speaking at universities, conferences, and rallies about the importance of systemic change. Her speeches weren't polished performances meant to impress. They were raw, honest reflections of her experiences. Justice isn't something you achieve overnight, she often said. It's a daily choice. It's deciding to stand up even when it's hard, to speak out even when your voice shakes, to believe in fairness even when the world feels unfair. Her message resonated deeply, especially among younger generations, hungry for guidance. Social media played a big role in amplifying her work, with videos of her talks going viral and hashtags like #YouStandWithMaya trending regularly. But despite the attention, Maya stayed grounded. Fame wasn't what drove her. It was the belief that real progress came from collective effort, not individual glory. One of the most remarkable aspects of Maya's legacy was how she handled failure. Not every case she took ended in victory, and not every policy she fought for saw immediate results. There were days when frustration threatened to overwhelm her, when judges ruled against her, clients lost faith, or critics dismissed her as naive. On those days, she leaned on the lessons she had learned as a teenager. Perseverance mattered more than perfection. You don't have to win every battle to win the war, she liked to say. Sometimes planting the seed is enough. Her relationship with Officer Hensley remained complicated but meaningful. Though he rarely spoke publicly about his transformation, those close to him noticed a profound shift in his behavior. He began volunteering at local shelters, quietly, helping people without seeking acknowledgement. Occasionally, he attended Maya's lectures, sitting in the back row with a mixture of gratitude and shame. Their interactions were brief and awkward, but there was an unspoken understanding between them, a shared history that neither could forget but both had grown from. Years later, during one of her biggest public events, Maya invited Hensley to share the stage with her. The audience gasped when he walked out, unsure of what to expect. For a moment, the room fell silent, the weight of their past hanging heavy in the air. Then Maya broke the tension with a simple smile. "This man taught me something valuable," she said, gesturing toward him. "He taught me that redemption is possible, even in the face of deep hurt. And he reminded me that justice isn't just about punishing wrongs, it's about creating opportunities for healing and growth." Hensley stood stiffly beside her, visibly uncomfortable but determined to finish what he had come here to do. "I'm not going to pretend I deserve forgiveness," he began, his voice shaky but sincere. "What I did was wrong, and I can't change the past. But I can try to be better, to listen, to learn, and to support the kind of change Maya fights for every single day." His words earned a standing ovation, not because he was perfect, but because his honesty struck a chord with everyone present. That moment marked a turning point, not just for Hensley, but for the entire movement Maya championed. It showed that accountability and compassion could coexist, that bridges could be built even over the widest divides. It also reinforced Maya's belief that true justice required more than punishment. It demanded understanding, patience, and a willingness to see the humanity in others. As the years went by, Maya continued to push boundaries, challenging systems and structures that perpetuated inequality. She worked tirelessly to reform policing practices, advocating for transparency, accountability, and community involvement. Her efforts led to significant changes, including statewide legislation, mandating bias training for law enforcement officers, and independent oversight boards to investigate misconduct. These victories didn't erase centuries of injustice, but they laid the groundwork for a brighter future. Outside of her professional life, Maya found joy in simple things, spending time with her family, mentoring young lawyers, and reading books late into the night. She still kept the same stack of law textbooks from her teenage years, now worn and dog-eared from use. They served as a reminder of how far she had come, and how much farther she intended to go. Though she had achieved so much, Maya never considered her work complete. "The fight for justice doesn't end," she often told her mentees. "It evolves. What matters is that we keep showing up, keep speaking out, and keep believing in the possibility of a fairer world." And show up she did. Whether it was arguing a high-profile case, mentoring a nervous teenager, or simply lending a listening ear to someone in need, Maya poured her heart into everything she did. Her story became a testament to the power of courage, determination, and empathy. She proved that brilliance and grit could overcome even the toughest obstacles, and that standing up for what's right wasn't just a job, it was a calling. Today, Maya's legacy lives on through the countless lives she touched. Her nonprofit continues to thrive, expanding its reach and impact. Young lawyers inspired by her example are making waves in courtrooms across the nation. Communities once silenced are finding their voices, demanding fairness and equality. And, though Maya herself has stepped back from the spotlight, her influence remains undeniable. In the end, Maya's story wasn't just about winning battles or changing laws. It was about proving that one person, no matter how young, no matter how underestimated, could spark a movement. It was about showing that justice wasn't reserved for the powerful or privileged. It belonged to everyone willing to fight for it. And it was about reminding us all that while the road to equality might be long and difficult, it's worth every step. Because in Maya's eyes, justice wasn't just a destination, it was a journey. And she was proud to walk it alongside anyone brave enough to join her.